Code of conduct for the followers of the Imam. Majlis 15. The followers of the Imam are required to be humble. Humility to God and the Imams is an act of devotion. Pride or over-consciousness of oneself, unless it is used in keeping oneself away from wrongdoing, is one of the signs of mean-mindedness. The Prophet says, "He who is humble to God will be exalted by him. There is no man whose head is not in the hands of an angel. If he lowers it down before God, the angel lifts it up, saying, 'Raise your head. God has raised you up.' If he raises his head with pride, the angel will lower it, saying, 'Lower yourself, because God has lowered you down.' Ostentation, pride, and self-conceit are the peculiar characteristics of the devils. They are condemned by the people in general, but if they are shown to the Imams, they look abominable. It is the worst sin that one can commit. We fail to understand how people can feel proud of or make a show of their actions if they undergo some hardship or take part in a religious war on account of the Imams. If they do this, they do it for their own selves and for their own good. If they have done this for the sake of God, then they are indebted to God and the Imams in this respect. God says, "They think they have conferred an obligation on you by following Islam. Tell them, do not talk of your obligation on me by your following Islam. On the contrary, God has obliged you by guiding you to the right faith. If you are true, you will realize the truth of this." On the other hand, if they work for the Imams for the sake of an allowance that is given to them, or the wages that have been paid to them, then they are nothing more than wage earners. If they work for the wages, they have no further claim. If they work more, they are entitled to a reward. If they work less than what they were expected to do, then they are the sinners. However, if they work voluntarily in order to improve their position and earn a good name, their purpose is served. The Prophet says, on the Day of Judgment, God will order some people to be thrown in hellfire. Some of these people will say, "O God, we have fought for your sake." Some will say, "We have been regularly performing the pilgrimage to your house." Others will say, "We have been praying and giving charities in your name." God will say to them, "You are liars. You have done all these things in order that you should be talked about as brave persons, as pilgrims, and as generous men. Your purpose has been served. You are talked about by people as such. Go to hellfire." In short, he who feels proud of his actions will be ruined by his pride, and he who puts a proper value upon himself will never suffer. Again, if one of those followers of the Imams scorns at the behaviour of the Qadis, and officers in treating him and his opponents alike, and at the sense of security which his enemies and the Zimmis enjoy along with him, he's misled by the false notion of his superiority over others. He thinks that because of his close proximity with the Imams, he is entitled to a preferential treatment. He is carried away by pride. His self-conceit drives him away from the right course. He tries to make a show of his superiority over his enemies without realizing the blessing that God has conferred on him by bringing him nearer to the Imams. and without thinking of the duties that are enjoined on him because of his nearness. He has a mistaken idea that he is entitled to a better treatment at the hands of the Imams and their officers than his enemies. If he makes a proper estimate of himself, he will come to his senses. He will then realize that if he had not been so closely connected with the Imams, he would have stood before his enemy much more degraded than what the latter appears to be to him. Consequently, it is his duty to treat his enemies on equal footing with himself, and never to boast to them of his influence with the Imams. They are just and fair. They treat their friends and foes alike. In this manner, they do what they have been commanded by God to do. We cannot attribute any injustice to them in front of ignorant people. If we do so, we should be giving them a handle to be used against the Imams. We should be putting into their heads a wrong idea that the Imams do things according to their own whims and not according to the dictates of God. The Imams are above being oppressive to anyone. To charge them with being unjust is as dreadful as to be hostile and oppressive to them. It is a clear case of transgression and defiance of their orders. It is a misrepresentation of their favours and a slipping away from the right course.